Hello, it's vast, German and frantic. It is the Frankfurt Motor Show. Appropriately, vast, German, quite frantic. The new BMW M5 is behind me. This is the 6th generation M5. Power is up from the old one by 40 brake horsepower. This is now a 600 metric horsepower car. You'll have got used to downsizing engine-wise with the last one. This one carries that on, still has a 4.4 litre twin turbocharged V8, but now can push this car to 190 miles an hour if you press the right options. Now, like the Mercedes E63 AMG, it's four-wheel drive, but do not be too alarmed. It is partly rear-wheel drive if you put it in the right modes. We have already been in a development hack of this car, which you will find a link to somewhere on this page. Also incredibly vast and quite German is the BMW X7 Concept iPerformance, which you see behind me. It's called iPerformance because, of course, this one's a plug-in hybrid. That will be alongside all of the other petrol and diesel options when it arrives bigger than the X5 late next year as a production car with 7 seats. Rejoice, hot hatch fans, because the Renault Megane RS is back. 5-door only this time, and it's quite subtle, isn't it, even in bright yellow paint. It's got a 1.8 litre engine with 275 horsepower, which is a bit less than the key rivals because they're all about 300 brake these days, but there will be a Cup version with more power later. It's got active rear steer, which is quite interesting, and Renault says it's going to be the best in class to drive. Of course, they would say that, wouldn't they? But we do have a fuller video with interviews with key engineers elsewhere on this page. Welcome to arguably the busiest place in Western Europe right now. It's the Mercedes-AMG stand in front of this, the Mercedes-AMG Project One. It is the Mercedes hypercar. It has a Formula One engine in the middle of a sort. It's built at the Mercedes-AMG engine factory in Brixham. It's detuned for 11,000 RPM rather than F1 cars, 18,000 RPM. But 11,000 RPM is quite a lot for a road car. That on its own makes more than 600 horsepower, and that is boosted by 4 electric motors. There is one to drive the turbocharger to make turbo lag insignificant. There is another one to boost power to the back axle. Then there are 2 on the front axle, which will be able to do a bit of torque vectoring cleverness as well. So this could be a complete EV. You can drive it on the front wheels alone if you want to. Why would you want to? Anyway, they're going to make about 275 of them. It's 2 seats. It's carbon fibre. It's got shades of Mercedes' old Group C sports car and GT1 car in a way. Really interesting car. It's going to cost over £2 million. I'm quite excited. Overall power will be 1,000 horsepower plus. It'll do 0 to 200 kilometers an hour. That's 0 to 124 miles an hour in 6 seconds and do 220 miles an hour flat out. It is quite the thing. So here's a car that is not going to change the world, but I think is quite cool. Volkswagen has found that so many customers buy premium top-end versions of its Amarok pickup. Mercedes has thought to itself, well, maybe we should put a premium badge on a pickup as well. And here we are, the X-Class. I think it's quite cool, but it does what most of these double cab pickups do. It has a separate ladder frame chassis, low ratio gearbox. It can tow 3.5 tons. You can put a ton in the back of it. It's got a range of muscly diesel engines, and it starts from 35 grand when it goes on sale at the end of this year. When Stefan Winkelmann took over at Audi's Quattro division, one of the first things they did was rename it Audi Sport. Well, now you know why. Here is a fast Audi that doesn't have Quattro four-wheel drive. It's the R8 V10 RWS for rear-wheel standard rather than rear-wheel drive, strangely. But it only powers the rear wheels. It is an R8 for driving purists, so they say, and it's a bit more like some of their GT racing cars that they use. Now, getting rid of the prop shaft, getting rid of all the drive shaft stuff at the front reduces the weight by 50 kilos, so this is a sub-1,600 kilogram car. They're only going to make 999 of them. Prices in mainland Europe are 140,000 euros. There is no UK price yet, but it's probably going to be about the same in pounds. Here's the thing, a hot hatchback from Hyundai. It's a bit unusual, isn't it? Hyundai and Kia, to be fair, they have just had relentless growth over the past couple of decades, and they know that the next step onwards is to make things a little bit more upmarket, a little bit more sporty. So they've hired Albert Biermann, who used to head up BMW's M division, and he's now in charge of cars like the Kia Stinger and this, the i30N. It's a 271 horsepower hot hatchback, apparently very good to drive, so that Hyundai assures us. And it goes on sale pretty soon, priced at about 25 grand, which is about the same as the Ford Focus ST. It should undercut the Golf GTI by a little. This then is the new Bentley Continental GT. What's new about it? Well, what isn't new about it? It's got a new platform. It's a new aluminium structure which weighs about 150 kilos less than the old GT. It's got more kit on it, and they put some of that weight back in. It's going to end up about 80 kilos lighter than the old car at 2,240-ish kilos. That's still quite heavy for a GT car, so it gets a 626 horsepower W12 engine. Why wouldn't it? That drives all 4 wheels through an 8-speed twin-clutch automatic gearbox. All of that drivetrain is new. Moreover, so is the suspension. It's got a 48-volt electric roll control system and air springs. Bentley is making really big claims about this car. They say it's more comfortable, it's more fun to drive. It's more engaging to drive. The weight distribution is that much better. It's much closer to 50-50 this time. And it goes on sale in spring 2018, priced from 156,000 quid, which is only 6 grand more than the last one. So this has been a long time coming, but it is finally here. It is the Volkswagen T-Roc, Volkswagen's answer to the Nissan Juke or the Mini Countryman. It's a Golf-based crossover. It's about the same sort of size as the Audi Q2 size. What's interesting is that Volkswagen said it is the more emotional side of a Volkswagen car. Wouldn't necessarily disagree. It's quite coupe-ish in profile. It's got quite a funky interior. However, Volkswagen does say that it is largely Volkswagen-ish to drive, which is no bad thing either. It'll be quite refined, quite mature. It'll have the full gamut of petrol and diesel engines with range-extended hybrids and electric versions coming later. Welcome to the inside of the Ferrari Portofino, which is the replacement for the California T. Sounds straightforward, doesn't it? But it's not quite as simple as that. This has an all-new chassis and body. There is no carryover whatsoever. It weighs 80 kilograms less than the California did. It's 35% more structurally rigid. It's pretty impressive. There's not much carryover in the engine. It's still a 3.9-litre twin turbocharged flat plane crank V8, but it makes 40 brake horsepower more than before, so it's 600 round metric horsepower. Drives through a new transmission. The reason it's got a new transmission is because it's now got an E differential at the back, which it didn't have before. Also, the Portofino, which is named after an Italian village, by the way. I've been. It's very nice, at risk of sounding like Judith Chalmers. It's now got electric power steering for the first time rather than hydraulic power steering. The 812 Superfast was the first Ferrari to get E-Pass. This one now gets it too. It means that Ferrari has managed to sharpen the steering ratio up a bit so it steers a bit more quickly, but apparently is no more nervous. It's still a little while away from arriving. It will come to the UK middle of next year, priced somewhere just south of £170,000. All right, you might see some headlines that your 911R is going to become worthless. Don't buy it, okay? This is not a new version of a 911R. What it is a 911 GT3 that does not have a rear spoiler. It's a more subtle 911 GT3. The differences between the latest GT3 and the old 911R are legion, and much more than simply the fact that the 911R was limited to 991 units. This is unlimited production, by the way, but it's also a bit heavier. It's about 1,430 kilos, whereas the R was stripped out with a lot of GT3 RS body panels that only weighed 1,370 kilos. But this is still quite exciting. I quite like it. I think it's possibly the GT3 of choice. And finally, this is the Honda Urban EV Concept, and it previews a production car that will arrive in 2019 when it will become Honda's first EV sold in Europe. It also previews a new design language for Honda's EV. I think it's pretty cool, actually. There are shades of Hondas of old, but there's also shades of Mark I Golf GTI. But hey, who cares? I think it looks terrific. There are no range or power details yet, but what Honda does say is that 2/3 of all the car it sells in Europe by 2025 will at least be partly electric powered. And that was the Frankfurt Motor Show 2017. Thank you very much for joining us. Please like, subscribe, comment, and keep coming back. We've got new videos every single week on Autocar, and we'll be back with another motor show in Geneva in March 2018.